major activity for gangs in Boulder?
I don't think there's any gangs in Boulder County or Louisville.
I think Louisville and Superior are kind of like in a bubble where like there's no interaction with gangs.
I don't really know of any. It's pretty tame around here.
I kind of know people, but I don't take them seriously.
I've never heard of a gang in Boulder County.
Every city that I know of's got gang members in it. You get a group of 3 or more people together. If they use the same name, if they wear the same clothes or whatever, if they go out and break the law, that's considered a gang.
It's a real presence. It's not something imagined or artificial. There are people who have wounds to demonstrate that they have had gang activity. A lot of people didn't know that there was a 34th Street. A lot of people didn't know that San Juan existed. 34th Street, a lot cooler. Together. I know that like people have my back and stuff like that.
These gangs and gang members we've either got living and operating in Louisville, or they've come through Louisville and I've contacted them. These are all ones that I've personally contacted. 34th Street is a street gang started up actually in Boulder. Norteños and Sureños are probably some of the more common Hispanic gangs that you guys have heard about.
You know, in my opinion, as far as gangs in Boulder County, I think they do kind of tend to follow a national trend or even a state trend.
Probably in a given year, there's like a dozen or maybe 15 cases that are clearly gang episodes that I get involved in.
I would say between 2004 and 2005 and since that time, I've seen a steady increase of more people wanting to become involved in it. It's certainly starting to transition a lot more. More females are becoming a lot more involved with gangs. So I would say at least, from my knowledge, at least 10 to 15 years that it's been here.
And believe it or not, we've actually got gangs everywhere. Every city that I know of's got gang activity, gang members in it.
In Boulder County, the I guess span of crimes that are typically associated with gang activity begin on the misdemeanor or smaller scale crimes, breaking into cars, some misdemeanor assaults, stealing, burglary, low-level burglaries. In the last couple of years, we've had shootings involved, weapons actually displayed and shots being fired. Fortunately, not resulting in anyone being hit.
Again, that's typically how gangs were started, is these specific groups, even like back when we had the first Irish immigrants coming to the U.S., that's where you really started seeing gangs. Is these Irish immigrants were being victimized. I mean, they didn't have good jobs, they couldn't make a lot of money. They're sleeping on the streets and they're being victimized and robbed by these other people, so they're forming a group for protection. You know, and it's all these Irish immigrants getting together. You know, it's not just because they were Irish, but it's because of that they're being victimized.
Root causes of gangs are two things in particular in my mind. I think a lot of it is that sense of belonging, having that friendship, that bond, being able to be with others that are just like you.
It provides a social network, sort of an extended family, if you will.
There are some kids who identify for a sense of belonging or looking for that community. They may not be very involved in the gang, but on the outskirts.
A lot of the kids that we have come from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds. They may be from single parent families, and so they're looking for that extra connection. that extra place where they can feel safe and they can feel secure and they can feel accepted and wanted. Because there's an old Spanish saying, "Dime con quién andas y te digo quién eres." It says, if you tell me who you're with, I'll tell you who you are.
Being a part of a gang allows some kids to have some of those social economic things where they can get those things that they see that other people are able to get that they can't get.
You could become a dealer, all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. And I don't know, just meet people, get connections with anyone, party.
But what a gang fails to address is the longer-term needs of community in a positive way. In a lot of ways, it's a poor substitute for the bonds of family. And also, it wastes a lot of the sort of creativity, intelligence, and compassion that we see a lot of these kids possess. It does not enable them to make the most of the positive traits.
You know, kids in gangs are good kids who make bad choices.
And we see this in talking to these kids. You know, some of these kids are some of the smartest, most clever, funniest, and compassionate kids that you'll ever see. And the gang setting does not allow them to make the best of those very positive attributes that they possess.
Growing up in Montbello at the time in the late 80s, every gang involved there was Crips and Bloods, which are historically bad gangs. I think here in Boulder, our makeup in Boulder pretty much is going to be Caucasian, and I would probably say our next one is maybe Asian, but there's a high Hispanic grouping there.
Your question was about racism. I don't think that's the root cause of being a gang member. It's such a complex issue and is affected by complex issues, that it's not only because they're Latino or because they're Asian or because they're white or Anglo. It's not about that.
I learned that these gangs are branching out somewhere in California. They're spreading all over the country.
They're the same gangs here that we had in Florida.
I learned that a gang is totally different than what I thought it was. It's not just what's in the movies and what's in music. I learned that there's a lot more going on in our happy little suburban community.
There are gangs everywhere. I mean, we might not see them, but they are present in a lot of schools and in our own neighborhoods, even when we think we're really safe.
The most important point, I think, to make is that the gang activity in Boulder is a point where, and I think a lot of folks would agree with me on this that are working on this issue, that we have an opportunity to make a difference, and that with things like mentoring programs, a proactive approach to engaging these young men and women into more positive social activities, we can, I think, effectively prevent the spread of some of the problems associated with gangs that you've seen in other communities.
So it's a community-wide problem, and it should be tackled or fixed or to find a solution community-wide. You have to bring in the Anglos, you have to bring in the Asians, you have to bring in the Blacks, you have to bring the whole school.
How do we marshal the best resources that this community already has in place to present an attractive and ultimately much more sustainable way of addressing the needs of these young men and women?
But if we don't face up to any problems that we have here in Boulder, they're going to grow. They're not going to go away.
And we're at a very critical point that we can really redirect a lot of kids and change that thinking process, that mentality.
I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to be stereotyped anymore. I didn't want to be looked down upon. I wanted to show pride in myself and my race. I didn't want to make it stereotyped that all Mexicans are gang members, stuff like that.
We want to make sure that we stay on top of this and really educate ourselves in the school district and as a public and really try to grab a hold of it, because we're in a
crucial spot.